Hello, welcome back. Today I wanted to make a tutorial on how I make my tail skinning look nice, especially on very thin tails like the one I have here. So, first of all, for the mesh, you want to make sure that you can get as uniform of a mesh as possible. Now, the sharper the angles that you want your tail to make, the denser this mesh will have to be. I've gone with this for today because I'm not going to make something super detailed for the tutorial, so this should be good enough. Okay, so now when it comes to doing the skinning itself, I prefer to make the warp deformers, the rotation deformers myself, rather than using the deform path because it gives me more control over the exact positioning of everything. So that's what I'm going to do now. Now you'll notice I don't have the tail selected. I am just going to go ahead and make my first rotation deformer. I don't know why it is that small. Let me... Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate this rotation deformer and line the copy up with the original to then get a very uniform distribution. So first thing as I'm going to do is I am going to set the freeze rotation to 180 degrees so it's pointing down since my tail is pointing down. And then holding control, I'm going to move it to the very top of my tail. Like that. And then you can decide how long you want to make this rotation deformer. I always use the end of it as a guide to line up the next rotation deformer, so you can kind of choose basically at this point how many parameters you have to deal with. So the more rotation deformers you make at this point, the higher the detail and technically the more motion your tail can make, but obviously it's going to take a lot more time to rig so many parameters. So I'm going to go with maybe something like that for now. So I'm going to copy and paste. And again, move down. Oops. Yes. Move down while holding Shift. Now, unfortunately, because the tail is red, it's very hard for me to see my deformer, so I'm just going to hide this real quick so that I can line these up properly. Now you'll see that this last deformer is just a little bit under the tip of the tail here. And I actually want this deformer to start pretty much exactly here, just to make aligning everything later easier. So I will just select all of the deformers, and this is also why I haven't nested them yet, is so that I can select them all like this, and then I can just drag that up to where I want it, and we'll align all of the others as well. Yeah, so now we have our rotation deformers. So what we're going to do is we're just going to nest these now. So 6 goes in 5, and 5 goes in 4. Wait, I'll do it down here so you can see it better. Like so. There we go. And now all we have gonna do to make the skinning itself is we're going to select the tail layer, and we're going to select all of the rotation deformers. Make sure you are not selecting the tip layer if you have one, because we don't want this to get weirdly deformed. We just want this to tilt with the end of the tail. Yeah, and then we're going to go to modeling, skinning. You will see that we now have all of our tail parts split up like so, and the glue keeping them together. Now, when it comes to making the parameters for skinning, what would be easiest is you just select these and go to modeling, skinning, and then generate parameters for rotation deformer. But in this case, I'm actually going to make the parameters myself and make them blend shapes, just because that makes adjusting everything easier later on, since I just key the meshes directly, and if you do it with regular parameters, you can do it. It's not really an issue. You're just gonna have to sit there and synthesize the corners for every single layer, which can get kind of annoying, which is why I'm going to do it with blend shapes now, so I don't have to deal with that later. And also, if you use blend shapes, you can do a reactive tail. If I remember to, I'll link a video that explains how to do that in the description if you guys are interested in that. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and make my parameters for the tail now. And I'm going to go for an angle of 60. I pretty much always do 60. Yes. And just do that until we have 6 of them. And then logically grab the first rotation deformer, add keys, set it to minus 60 degrees on one side, and you can then also just reflect the motion. And just continue doing that until, and just make sure that, first of all, I just realized I haven't frozen the rotation on these, so I'm just gonna do that real quick, make things easy for myself. Yes, and just make sure that when you're setting the keys that every rotation deformer gets the same angle. Okay. Now, you'll have maybe noticed that I entered minus 60 when the tail is technically at 60. This is just because my tail is pointing downwards, so the rotation deformers are also pointing downwards, so the angles there are going to be reversed. What's important is that on the right side, you want your tail to move to the right. On the left side, you want it to move to the left. And obviously, this is going to look a little weird at first, but bear with me. We're gonna go in and fix it now. Yeah, but before we do that, I'm also just going to grab the tip of the tail and put it into the very last rotation deformer, so that's also following all of the movements. Okay, so now for adjusting the shape. We are not going to have to mess with the glue at all. We're just going to key the mesh itself. So now you'll notice through the glue, we always kind of have 2 pieces in one of these spots with the weird, I don't know what to call this, bump. So you're going to select both of these meshes, so tail 0 and tail 1 in this case. And we're going to go ahead and give that keys on this parameter. And then all you're going to do, I like to do this with a deform brush. You can do it however you like. Just go in and smooth out this curve. Okay. And then once you are pretty much happy with that result, now it doesn't have to be perfect this first time around. Just try and get it to be as smooth as you can make it. We'll go in later and do some more adjustments. And now you're going to do the other side as well. And a little trick to make this easier, or at least symmetrical, what you can do is click here to make a guide image. You'll see this is kind of transparent image here. And now you're going to click the camera with an arrow next to it. And this will just make this guide an actual picture or an actual layer. So then you can just right click and flip. And then you can kind of use that as a base for adjusting the other side. Okay, I am going to call that good enough. And this is just where the tedious part comes in. We're going to continue doing this for all of the other parameters. So now we just adjusted this section, so now we're going to adjust this section, which is where the tail 1 and tail 2 overlap. So I'm going to go to tail 3, add keyforms, and adjust again. Now for the very end of the tail, this one is a little weird because it's kind of only going halfway through the next curve. So you're actually going to have to shift the entire thing to the right or left, depending. Okay, I am going to call that good enough for now for the first pass. Of course, feel free to take as much time on this as you'd like. Now, next, you'll see that it's already curving, much nicer. But if we move all of these parameters, you'll see it's still not quite a perfectly round shape. You're still getting like these areas where it's bending a little stronger than others. So now we are just going to go in and even this out a bit. So just hiding that again. So what we're going to do is it's the same principle. You select those same two tail parts that you were using to adjust this area before. Only this time you're going in and just evening out the curve a bit. And we're just gonna try and get this to become as good of a circle as we can make it. Now I am not going to be too picky with my shapes here. I think I'm going to go for good enough for now. Now mine here is more of an oval than a circle, but just try your best to get this shape to look very nice and round because this is what your tail will look like when it curls up and around. And now what you're gonna have to do is the same adjustments, but for the other side. So curl your tail the other way and make the same adjustments. Now, if your canvas is larger, again, you can also just use a guide image for this. Make your life easier. I can't in this case, but oh well. We have reached a good enough result for the other side as well. And now that the tail is all adjusted, I'm just going to go in and just make sure that the tip of the tail is following again. I'll just copy tail 6 here. Now, you'll notice that the two rotation deformers in each other will make this weird, like, a bump motion. So what I will do is I will just key the tip of the tail directly and then delete this rotation deformer to get that curve to look a little more smooth, and I'll just add extended interpolation so it doesn't shrink in between keyframes. There we go. And that would be the rigging for our tail completed. Now you'll see it curls very nicely in either direction. And the physics, of course, you can set up however you like. You could have an idle motion or connect them to body angles, whatever you'd like to do. I'm going to go ahead and set up a little idle animation now, and then just set up some example physics that you could also copy if you'd like. Yeah, and now that we've set up our little idle animation, you will see the scene up here. You can just click play, and you'll see our idle parameter will move back and forth. Now, when it comes to giving tail an idle animation, I always like to use an angle input, and I like to increase the input normalization of angle. So this will just determine essentially how far this parameter can move my pendulum. So if you see if I add a pendulum here, you can see it's always going between about -10 and 10 because those are the numbers here. So I'm going to just set these to, I usually do like -20 and 20 for tails, just to make this movement wider, which I find is better for having so many parameters. And when it comes to the physics, I usually find for slower tail movements, a very low shaking influence and a low reaction time will help make your tail look good. And for faster movements, keep the low shaking influence, but increase the reaction time. And I'm just going to, for now, I'm just using the default preset since the motion looks pretty okay. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. Now you see it doesn't really move. Doesn't really move much at first, but all we gotta do is click increase output. And yeah, our tail is moving around pretty nicely. I'm actually happy. I'm going to leave it as is. Yeah. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful or informative. Yeah. And good luck with your tail rigging, and I will hopefully see you in my next video.